Thank you for staying with us. Events that have shaped the agricultural sector in recent times within Nigeria indicate that the country is far from achieving Goal 2 of ending hunger by 2030 in line with the global agenda of Sustainable Development Goals. Millions of Nigerians suffer from food and nutrition insecurity and other challenges such as perennial floods, farmer header crisis, inability to transform the livestock sector, amongst others, have all continued to undermine the country's viable agricultural sector. Now, President-elect Bola Tinubu, in his agricultural transformation blueprint, promised to utilize the energy of the youth, farmers, workers, and also consolidate the achievements of Muhammadu Buhari's administration in agriculture to ensure that the country becomes food self-sufficient. And farmers are hopeful that their voices will be heard in creating friendly agricultural policies. Well, joining us to shed more light on this issue is an agribusiness coach and consultant, African farmer Mogaji. Thank you for joining us in the studio this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Right. Let's even begin from this matter of the CBN saying that the 1,000 naira, the 500 naira, and 200 naira have become a legal tender. Because if you look at the papers this morning, it was reported that cash chaos crushes farmers, about 13 million jobs under threat. Give us a sense of how this crunch had affected that the agricultural sector, so to speak.
Well, first thing first is almost all policies don't put farmers in view when they are making it. CBN has put in too much money in the last 8 years not to consider that sector. Many loans will not be repaid. Why? If you check now, watermelon is expensive and not even available because the farmers do cash. Everywhere in the country, most of these places, like I said before, there are no banks. Everything is cash. They buy 99% of farm produce from farmers, 30 years standing cash. Even from us that are modernized is cash. You pay all labor cash because they use the money to feed themselves immediately. So this cash scarcity has actually taken the agricultural sector 3 steps back from where CBN started. So before, flood last year, insecurity, the cash is even worse because farmers were managing. So right now, many people have not started farming operations because they are scared. Plantain now is wasting and has become gold because the sellers, when they go to the buyers want cash. Even the farmers still try, farmers across, try to embrace it, but the payments were failing. And on the farm, if you say you will give them their pay tomorrow, if you don't give them tomorrow, they don't come to work. So many of them they are rather staying at home. After expending the energy, there's no money to buy food. So bottom line is that we're likely to have it tougher in the next few months because of this policy.
But the CBN has, come to say that the 500, 1,000 can now become a legal tender. So are you still looking at the difficulty in a few months?
They've not, what they've just said is just going to have effect in October.
Really?
So what has gone bad has gone bad. So the people who have not planted, the ones who do fadama, there's no labor for them to do the fadama. Many of them have abandoned their farms across the country. Many of them have made huge losses beginning of this year. The irrigation farmer also does not have labor to do the work. And every decision that they takes about 4 months for them to clear it. So as we speak now, the farmers who ought to be producing tomatoes from Iseyin and Southwest to cushion the lack of the supply, the breaking supply that will come in May, June, because the northerners don't produce at that time, the weather does not favor them. They are not doing anything now. So because they don't have cash to clear the land, not even manual, they don't have cash to pay the tractor operators. You must buy food for tractor operators. Everybody is cash. Everything is cash. So neglecting the agricultural sector by implementing that policy meant that they just reversed everything they've done in 8 years.
Right. All right. Now, the point there is Nigeria has always been known. In fact, the DNA of Nigeria is agriculture. That is why our green, white, green has always been. We grew up in primary school learning about that agriculture was the crux of Nigerian survival. But as it is right now, it seems like agriculture is not even number 2 or number 3 on the scale of preference when it comes to the attention that we give to agriculture. But that is still what feeds the country. So it takes us now to the issue of production and the issue of food security. We have seen whatever we've seen now. You're saying that it's going to take about 4 months to 6 months, whatever the thing is, for the impact to begin to kick in. By that, we're going to see a new administration in the next 2.5 months, as the case may be.
Yes.
What are you expecting or seeing or expecting from the new administration coming on board to take some of these things headlong and create a change?
The good thing around the incoming administration is that the president is a rural person.
The president-elect.
President-elect is a rural person in urban clothing.
But they call him city boy sometimes.
Yeah, they call him city boy. But if you check his conversations when they wanted to increase tax, he did say to them, no, it's going to affect the people at the bottom of the pyramid. He's always, if you check everything he does, bottom of the pyramid is priority. So first thing first is that the president needs to understand, president-elect needs to understand that, because some of us have moved on. Some of us have programmed ourselves, we've moved on, so it's difficult to be saying president-elect, president-elect.
Yeah, but he's still president-elect.
President-elect.
He hasn't been inaugurated yet.
Because we have to face the reality of feeding the people. So it's that Nigeria has been curious but not serious about food security. Very crucial, because if we've been serious, it would reflect in our actions. Policies that need to come into place need to first understand international food politics and diplomacy. Number one is you don't compete with the international community, you collaborate with them.
Right.
Very crucial, because they have developed policies and funded their processes for years, that you must look at how do I collaborate with them? What do I mean? So if the president-elect said agbado, cassava, corn, cassava, and beans, not bringing it into play that United States of America is the biggest player in corn, and they fund policies that influence supply market of corn. I'm trained in U.S. foreign policy and food security to know that, okay, you can, instead of telling them reduce your imports, tell them we'll buy your seeds because we don't have that strength. So while we try to build our strength over the coming years, we're still buying their corn. And we're saying, what will you be taking from us? Exchange. But if we come with the ban, diplomacy, they will quickly flag it that, oh, you signed this bilateral agreement 20 years ago, World Trade this and that, and begin to paint Nigeria in the image we don't want. Likewise, Europe. So we need to know that we must collaborate with them and not compete. Look for their business interests who are using agricultural produce to say, okay, why don't you do 50%? The companies producing milk in Nigeria, not really producing, importing milk, reconstituting, we need to engage our milk production to develop it, to say, okay, you are producing yogurt with our product. Let's produce more milk for you to produce yogurt. But your yogurt will be 100% Nigerian milk. And develop it. We must develop it. Any hammer coming will meet with stiff resistance. And don't forget, they have funding. And we must let them know the kind of funding that we want that will work for us. I have said this and I will still say it. Most of interventions from the big global banks have not worked in Nigeria. And yet, when they want to bring, there's another one on the table now, same design, same model that has been failing. So if you don't understand that, that will be an issue. Then we need to come in with a policy of eat local. The president-elect must come out to say, we will eat local. Any state that is not eating local in their state houses, in anything they do, that is not eating local rice, local fufu, dundu, which is fried yam, you must introduce. Pasta is not African.
Yeah.
It's Italian, but we've taken it. So dundu and akara and all those things, we should introduce it to them. So it should be an exchange. Eating local is very crucial. If we don't eat local, we won't be able to sustain ourselves. Another conversation that we now pay attention to is we need to move away from muscle times time equals limitation. We focus all the interventions that CBN and Co have been doing on muscle energy. We need to take it to mechanization times time equals abundance. Muscles is limited. Time is limited. It gives you limitation. Mechanization is not limited. Time is limited. It gives you abundance. That is the mechanism and the model and the framework that developed countries have used. Then our ambassadors need to deliver. Most of our ambassadors are not delivering when it comes to agriculture. I've traveled a bit, been involved in some international...
You're referring to Nigerian ambassadors?
Nigerian ambassadors, yeah.
Well, we have institutions where we have reports where they are not being funded. What do you want them to do?
See, I was in India and a couple of other countries, and they're complaining about our ambassadors. Their agri-project, let me tell you this, almost all developed countries in the world want to do business with Nigeria, have funding, have intervention to be able to bridge, their technology that they want to bring in. But our ambassadors are not available. I met Burkina Faso ambassador when we couldn't find a Nigerian ambassador to talk to. And the man came to sign a $300 million electricity contract. And I asked the man, why are you getting this and we're not getting it? He said, because most ambassadors, when they come, they don't engage. And people came to us saying, oh, there's one. They said, oh, there's 200 sponsored exchange program for Nigerians. And they've been going to embassy and they've not accepted it. So they should be on targets, especially in agriculture. Because, you see, what makes US, United States, the largest in almost everything, is that there's a deliberate policy that every ambassador must deliver. You must open a market for a product. And that's why when you see China fighting America or having issues with America, China will first go after the agricultural produce coming to them. So we need to open those markets and place a demand on them to say, every month you must deliver a project. And when they begin to develop a project, and don't forget, Brexit has happened to UK.
Yes.
The rain, lack of rain, droughts last year also disrupted Europe. And the food is very expensive. Europe is looking for new partners, and Nigeria is the place to be. And again, region, if you look at the elections, because this is very crucial, if you look at the elections, you find that we still have a lot of ethnicity play out there. Why don't we ride with the waves instead of fight against it? When Nigeria was leading in oil palm, granules and co, it was regional approach. So let's decentralize agriculture and have a regional approach where the East will leverage, work together, they speak the same language, even though the dialects may be different, and let us begin to trade again. And let again cooperatives globally, agriculture, where agriculture is premium and is working, is cooperatives. Everything we import that is food, that is raw, is produced by cooperatives in those countries. But in Nigeria, we've left our cooperatives. The marketing that you buy the farm produce is done by cooperatives in other countries and developing countries. So we need to understand what works. And a big appeal to the president-elect. We need an expert as the Minister of Agriculture who has production background. Production background, it might be processing, it might be crop planting or rearing animals. But now we need to produce quality so that the multinationals who import this farm produce because of consistency in quality can, protect that. The more we produce the right quantity and quality, the more we can export. It's very crucial.
Right. Now, the president-elect had said that he will build on the successes achieved by President Muhammadu Buhari. And one of the things that the president brought on board was the anchor borrower scheme that farmers were said to benefit from. But there were some issues around that. How would you want him to rework this aspect such that the real farmers actually benefit from it?
A fundamental thing is they need to rejig that model. What do I mean by that? Now, unfortunately in Nigeria, we don't copy what works in other developing nations like India, like Malaysia. What is working can be copied and pasted because we have almost same judiciary, same everything. Now, we try to do big things like the Americans and the Europeans, but our culture and our lifestyle is communal, which India, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, all of them have leveraged. So currently, what works is that the middleman that Nigeria has been trying to eliminate over the years, we've not been able to eliminate them. So why don't we work with them? Why don't you fund the middlemen who already have been working with farmers in various locations 20, 30 years, who their fathers and grandfathers have done the same business? When the farmers need money, they don't go to bank. They go to the middlemen to take credit. So what needs to happen is the middlemen are the ones that they ought to fund as the anchors, not new people that you want them to go and bring 10,000 farmers that they don't have a relationship with. But the middlemen have relationships with 500, 350. They need to build it to the way we are wiring, and that will work. Revamping it into political structure is what, paint that structure, bring it into agriculture. If it works for politics, it will work for agriculture. When Nigeria was working in terms of agriculture, these were the systems. So once they rejig that to fund the people already working with the farmers, then they can influence price. Then they can influence the value chain. But without working with the people that the farmers are loyal to, they know come rain, come shine. They are loyal to them. They are the people that will buy from them. They are the people that will cheat them. So if you support that structure, it works. Trying to knock that structure, they will frustrate things. So the anchor borrower, I have always said it was a well thought through design program, but badly implemented. Badly. And a fundamental thing that flaws it is that most of the funding don't get, even the farmers that benefited, if they're supposed to give them the input twice, the first one mostly comes late, and when it comes early, the second tranche comes like 4 or 5 weeks after. So the farmers have gone to the middlemen again to borrow money. And so the farmers will now default. Do you get? So bottom line, and CBN cannot challenge me on this. They should challenge me with their facts.
Right.
And the fact is, they don't give the funding to the farmers that benefited from it at the right time. So the farmer is forced to go raise money, and he will get it at a higher interest. And by the time he does that, it doesn't come in. I stand bold to be corrected. In Gombe, the Commissioner of Agriculture there in Gombe, I think 2018, declined the second tranche of the funding because it came about 3 months later. And he said, no, I won't take it because those farmers won't be able to pay. So CBN can check the records and, so when I speak with facts. They cannot try, contesting what I'm saying because it's real. So we need the funding to come out at the right time. The farmers and associations have been crying all the while.
All right. Now, you mentioned food politics. And, it draws my attention to the issue of a comparative advantage.
Yes.
Now, Nigeria is known, there are some things that naturally grow in Nigeria. Things like yam, cassava, oil palm, cocoa, rubber. We have all of these things where the whole world, when they're looking for this kind of commodity, Nigeria, or at least some African countries, but especially Nigeria, is where it comes to mind. The last 10 to 15 years, we've been putting so much emphasis on the growth of rice. Of course, rice is a staple in Nigeria. But we have never been able, with all of the funding, with all of the intervention, we've never been able to sufficiently, 100%, feed ourselves in the rice that we produce without augmenting with importation. So when it comes to being self-sustenant, or self-sustaining, if I use that word, with the areas that we have comparative advantage, how does that give us an edge when we're talking about food politics around the world?
So check the policies since 1999. Either they are bringing a policy to force on the private sector, the existing operators. Take, for instance, almost all cassava interventions have come to tell the processors, the millers of wheat, that you must take this thing, work with it, as against saying, come, we know you are using wheat, but cassava can do the same. Can you fund this research and lobby them? If you don't lobby them, they have signed contracts of 20, 30 years, and it will not work. So even the rice we are talking about, rice is still seen as a commodity. Every time we fund an intervention and we come with a commodity mindset, it will not work. What we should be looking at is the value chain. So you hear everybody saying rice, 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 rice. Now, foreign politics will ensure and fund this rice not working here by bridging customs and co. But if we focus our local rice initially to making rice semo, making pasta with the rice, making other things. So we process the rice and we set up small-scale processing plants that will convert it into better value-added products. So commodity doesn't sell that much. So bottom line is that value chain. We've always been raw material, raw material, raw material, as against adding value. So we've been talking about local rice, local rice, local rice. Let's do basmati. If the farmer farms basmati rice and we leave other rice to be imported, they will get premium money for it. There's a value chain in all these things. No intervention, I stand to be corrected, no intervention has had a value chain approach. Logistics, agribusiness is logistics. You don't see them funding any transporter in the intervention. And after even if you give hybrid, which they don't give hybrid to the farmers, they don't give hybrid, they give the normal seed that give them normal result. So if you fund logistics and the logistics man can plan around it, then it goes a long way. If you fund the seed inputs, if you fund the processors, they don't fund the processors who will be buying from farmers. They will rather just go and fund the farmers. So we need to balance these things out. There are funding that used to go to the millers, the feed millers, that suddenly, I think 2019, the people giving them fund told them to, in fact, CBN told them to go and get consultants to access funding that they've been accessing for years.
Why?
Wow. Why is that?
So when you hear that the poultry sector is, breaking down, this is it. This is national life media. Let them go to the feed millers, the big ones, and ask what I'm saying. So the president actually tried. That's the truth. The people making policy truncates the man's effort. And the new incoming also needs to understand how these things work. The internal food politics. Many of us run into that. The average player has run into debt because of all these policies. We put in our sweat. We want to support the government, but many people are in debt today. A lady called me, one of the leading baby food producers yesterday, said, I'm giving up. I'm tired. This thing is not rocket science. We need to make this happen.
Yeah.
We can feed ourselves.
Yeah.
We have everything it takes. We just need the right person. And I know, and I'm trusting that President-elect will be able to keep the promise to the grassroots. When we do the grassroots and the youths, we will be food secure. But it's not working.
Right. One question I like to ask is the aspect of climate change, how we can manage, because no matter how beautiful our policies are, no matter what we do, when that happens, natural disasters, it just wipes away everything. How best can we manage it as it stands?
As it stands, we're not prepared, but we can work with what we have. We can use improved seeds and seedlings and leverage our comparative advantage. We have lands. So there's upland, there's lowland. There are varieties of seeds that you can use that let the rain be heavy till tomorrow. They can do well and they are not genetically modified. In fact, there's a particular variety of tomato that was brought from Africa, developed, and so if the rain is heavy, it is indigenous to Africa, especially West Africa. So these are things that governments, either at presidency or at states, but most importantly, the states, not even presidency now, at federal, the states need to pay attention to this. So yes, it's a challenge, but if we can leverage this by using the right inputs, then two, there are also organic inputs now that reduces flower abortion. So if there's too much rain, it's flower abortion. So, but there are organic products now that helps the flower not to abort and is healthy. But now let's talk about floods. Now NEMA has spoken that the floods this year will be higher than last year.
Yeah.
And we all saw what happened last year.
So what that means is that there will be heavy rainfall and the lowlands will be washed away. So we need to promote more upland rice than lowland. So you may say, oh, we need to clear. No, there are so many cleared lands that we need to use. So clearing lands is not priority. It's already late. You're clearing the dry season. So if we leverage what we have and focus on productivity, this needs to happen. For us not to go hungry, 25 million plus as predicted by Food and Agriculture Organization under the World Bank, for 25 million people not to go hungry, now the president-elect needs to engage, because the moment he gets into office, Nigerians are expecting an economic miracle. Not performance, miracle. But for that miracle to happen, some things need to happen. Once they take care of food, the floods will come. But after the floods goes, can we leverage? And we can leverage, because most of those lands are swampy. And so as you will plan to do Fadama, which is planting, as the water is receding, I did a project in Gombe. As under the river basin, as the water was receding, farmers were planting. And so they didn't use any cost on diesel or fuel. This is how to leverage. We cannot stop the flood, but we can leverage it after. So right now, we should be encouraging the farmers use upland. If you don't tell them to use upland and bring some incentive, they will not get there.
What is this upland?
Upland are areas of land that the floods don't get to. The higher elevated portions of land.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Now, let's talk about the issue of commodity boards and the clearing houses that we often have heard about in the days where Nigeria was Nigeria with agriculture. That was when we had all the pyramids and all the cocoa and all of that. Now, the president-elect mentioned that there will be commodity boards as a way of mopping up these things from farmers and then creating a standard and so on. How would this be a game changer? How is that?
So this is also, it's a good idea. Implementation again. Now, commodity boards were functional because government was actively funding or supporting the value chain.
Okay.
Because without that support, you cannot regulate. If I get a loan at 50% and I go and farm, you can't tell me how much I will sell. But if you have subsidized the loan, or I have some incentive to say if something goes wrong, you take care of it. So what needs to happen? This is unorthodox, and this is what works. See, we need to just look at political system in Nigeria and copy and paste. Now, when it's election time, we play a lot of religious politics. Now, we need to bring religion into this. How do we? And creatively.
How is that? Okay.
Now, so set up the boards, put in Christians and Muslims, that you know will not compromise to work together. How does that work?
Right.
If you put Christians, they can come and beg from the church and say, please, my cousin, my auntie. If you put Muslims in charge, same thing. But if you mix them together, they are like, okay, fine, we need to deliver. The goal will be to deliver, not religion. The church is funding. The Muslims also, they are funding. Both of them are feeding the people on a weekly basis. So let them nominate people that will come in. Don't nominate professionals. Let the professionals work with them. But we need to come with unorthodox ways of doing these things. And let me say this. Nigerians love business. Now, already over the years now, we've had people with the cash challenges now. Many businesses have been, affected. So if you appoint them as boards and these community boards, what would they do? They will sort themselves, register companies, that the companies will be the ones, buying and selling. So we need
all the contracts within
we need unorthodox ways to do this. And you see, when we're talking about religion, many times we talk about the negative side. Our roads are better today. I say that boldly. I travel around this country. Our roads are better under President Muhammadu Buhari. Let's say the truth. And a chunk of the money now is with the Sukuk fund. Yeah. So I'm not seeing any Christians say, I can't drive on that road, though. No, everybody just wants good things. So right now, the churches have a lot of funds planning for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years that can be brought into the value chain now. So bottom line, we need to leverage our religious organizations positively and bring them into this play, because Nigerians listen to their religious leaders more than politicians and experts.
Yes.
So we need to leverage that now. We need to bring us together, and food brings everybody together. The food you ate last night. Yeah. The food you ate last night.
I like that.
Did you ask who farmed it?
Exactly.
Did you ask who sold it?
Not at all.
The lunch today, we don't ask questions when it comes to food. We just want to eat. So we need to leverage that for national security.
Nice.
Interesting. Now let's talk storage. That's a major challenge with us in Nigeria. And if we're looking at food sufficiency, there must be storage. Talk to us from that window.
Yes, storage. We have to look at storage from two perspectives.
Yeah.
First and foremost, fresh storage. We are doing really badly with fresh storage. I researched India when I went there a couple of times on potato, Irish potato. Associations and individuals and corporate organizations, are the ones that own this storage. The farmers come and keep it there, no government. They use a lot of solar-powered panels to keep it. There are locations where we have electricity. So we say there's no electricity.
Yeah.
That's not accurate. There are places in Kano that has electricity. There's a place in Hussein, I've been operating there for about 15 years. If you are boiling rice, before you lose your last bubble, if they take light, the light comes off. Oshogbo has light. There are locations that have light that we should go and start from a comparative advantage instead of looking at the whole country. So there are lights in various locations, in various regions. Let's start with what they are producing there, both for fresh and also for dry. But for the dry ones, I would appeal to the new administration to reconsider the silos that they privatized. Why? We don't have enough storage. The private sector can come in, but we gave out the silos. And if it's private sector, there's a documentary online, Water Kings. You see, water lords. They gave the rights for water to private sector, and so they are charging farmers 40-50% to use the water. And so many of the country, like Australia and co, are having challenges because it's fully privatized. You don't privatize water. You don't privatize water anywhere.
In fact, now they say water is human rights.
In fact, in 2014 in California, the drought that was there, they were undergoing a training by the U.S. government. And the biggest dam they found out that their third largest dam, they are taking water under the soil, under the land. So in the capacity of their third largest dam. So they made a law that water under the soil belongs to governments in California. You can no longer claim right on the water because water is gradually becoming the most scarce raw material. Europe last year. So a lot of things, we need to work with the times and ensure our river basins is the biggest asset government should never, because of the dear challenge we have. Our silos are empty. I stand to be corrected again. The silos are empty. If the silos are empty and it does not rain for 3 months in this country, then we are in for it. So if our silos are empty, the river basins still have water and mother dams to provide water for us to produce. So river basins should be priority, to produce fresh. Peradventure, there's no rain. So we need to build more silos. We need to, all the multinationals that are looking into agric now to raise, exports for forest, let us encourage them to build their silos. And government also needs to build more silos. In fact, more silos is more important than production now. Because even after they produce, there's no silo to store.
Right.
Yeah.
So, pari passu, that's the value chain that we need to look into that storage. And the storage should not be all this giant storage. In the US, where we celebrate them having corn and soya, they have cooperatives, like multinational cooperatives, who own silos in various regions to store various produce, farm produce produced there. So not giant things. The private sector, somebody who is about to retire from oil and gas can bring 5 people together and go and set up silos in Dadinkoa and all those places where government has already invested in giving subsidy to rice millers. They've given rice mill subsidy. So we need to go and set up silos there that can help. But that is storage is very crucial. But we should not focus too much on what we don't have currently, this year. We should find a way to make food flow. We don't have enough. So if 40% of anything fresh produced goes to waste, we should invest in logistics such that what should waste is moved.
Okay. All right. Now, as we wind down gradually, the issue of research is another thing. Nigeria has done well in setting a template where we even have universities of agriculture, we have agric research institutes, and so on. How do we leverage on some of those research? Because it's expected that because we have those things, it should be easy for us to, translate or improve on mechanized farming or any of the, models of farming.
As well as technology.
As well as technology. So the incoming administration at federal and state need to understand something. There is nothing new under the sun.
Okay.
There's nothing we are looking for that is not lying in the research institutes in Nigeria. So the incoming administration need to tell the research institutes, because we have mandate for rubber, mandate for oil palm, mandate for almost all the crops. Give me 3 projects, 1 to 3 projects that we can scale. And I can tell you, and give them 48 hours. They will just pull it off the shelf and send it. So we need to fund them for the future, not for now. We've already invested in them. They have what we need for now. We need to invest in them for the future. But what can make this happen is to say, give us 3 things and fund the 3 things, not government directly, package it for private sector, and that would help. And technology, the technology we need now is not the big technology. It's not from the advanced country. We need technology to move farmers from muscle to small equipment. 120,000 naira equipment. And not even just give the farmer. Set up the youths to have cooperatives that the farmers will pay, either on credit or something, will pay to go and do the operations for them. We need small equipment. It's working in India, it's working in China, it's working in Malaysia and Indonesia. It can work in Nigeria.
Right, and that's a fine place to leave the conversation. Agribusiness coach and consultant, African Farmer Mogaji, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you.